It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
Hey guys, it's the Morning Star Drive on 117.8 and really happy for all of you joining us here today and ready to start the new day amazingly together with the Lord. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So today we have an exciting podcast for you. We have 2G Talks with Eddie Kwan from San Francisco, the Sunday Message Word Study, and of course commentaries and news on what is happening around the world today in this history. All right, everyone, how are you doing? Yes, amazing Sunday message. Hope you guys enjoyed your Sunday services. I would say this is one of the most, not one of the most, but like I said, over the last couple of weeks, we've been getting these powerful messages, and it just kind of gives you strength and gives you even more conviction in what we are doing right now, going through all these tribulations and such. So I really hope that you guys received as much grace and fire as I did too. And we're going to go over that during the word study, which is a second section for today, and we'll end things off with Eddie Kwan and 2G Talks. And if you haven't yet already, please subscribe on YouTube and leave likes and comments to build up our community. Really happy for everyone joining us here today on the Morning Star Drive. So let's get up, support each other each and every day. Put your likes or comments. Would love to hear how things are going. All right, so I'm here in Vancouver. It's been less than a week. Jet lag is still pretty strong, meaning, well, it's not as bad as obviously as it was in the beginning. But I love the mornings now because I'm waking up anywhere from 2 to 4 a.m. On this morning, I woke up at 3:16. I was like, I woke up and I got up and I checked my phone. It was 3:16 a.m. And of course, as us in this history, whenever we see these significant numbers, we see it all the time on Instagram where people are posting like, oh my gosh, look at the license plate. It has 316. Oh, look at this. It says 218. Oh my gosh, 777. Here in this history, these numbers are very significant to us. And I don't know about you guys, but if you wake up at 3:16 or you look at the clock and it's like 3:16 p.m., for some reason, because it's meaningful, it's interesting because I just feel that God is with me already. Of course, it was like 3:14. It's not going to be like, oh, God's not with me today because I didn't wake up two minutes later. But, it's interesting how numbers play such a big role. Have you guys been through that? Do you guys go through that where you see a meaningful number and boom, you're like, oh my goodness. I've even seen people go a little bit further where the license plate's like 361. But they'll still post and oh my gosh, it's so close to 316. If you just switch the second and third number, it would be 316. Or some other people would have I was going to work today and I saw 14 license plates. And what happened was if I, took one of the numbers from each of them, they would come to 316. I've seen people do some crazy stuff like that, but I'm not sure. I'm not like that. It has to be pretty obvious to me. I remember one time where before I came to this history, I was 18, 19 years old. And I told my parents for the first time, hey, I want to move away from home. This is when I moved to LA. This is when I came to this history because I came when I was, when I moved to Los Angeles to go there for school. But before going, it's kind of crazy because you ask for signs. And even when it's so odd and rare, you still kind of is it real? It's so weird. And then we'll take these small things like 316 and something that you see a license plate and we're so easily sharing it on our Instagram and stuff like that. For me, before it's a big decision for an 18, 19-year-old to finally say, especially in an Asian family, I'm moving out of the house. Because I know more Americans are at 18 years old, they're already moved out. Asians, we stay with their parents until we're married, and some people still live with their parents after they're married, right? But, I sat there praying, God, is this the right thing? Should I go to LA? And I looked, I was in my bedroom and, just contemplating in a dilemma of, is this the right thing to do? And there was a window right in front of me, and I was like, God, if it is the will for me to go to LA, make birds fly past my window. And I look at the window and 2 birds fly past the window. And I'm like, oh, there's 2 birds. This must be right. And then all of a sudden in my head, I'm like, but they were crows. and they're black and ominous. Could that be from Satan? And the funny thing is, I never told God like what type of bird to send past my window. But even at that point, I was like, maybe it's not God. And then I said again, I was like, all right, God, if it's real, if you're really real, then let them pass again. And crazy part is birds flew past my window. And, it's interesting because I'd ask for these crazy things, kind of like Gideon, like, hey, God, I'm going to put like this sheepskin, and first, let the sheepskin be wet, but not the ground. And like, that's a crazy request. And then after he's like, well, now let the ground be wet and not the sheepskin. And it's like these ridiculous things we ask God for like these signs when we already get the sign. But for me, I'll just like, yeah, Providence people are kind of crazy in that thing. Like, oh my gosh, 316. Oh my gosh, 1178. Oh my gosh, 117. And we kind of freak out, or we kind of, will that to happen on our own. I'm not sure about you guys. Sometimes I'm like that just to get that extra God is with me, Are you guys like that or not? I think it's quite normal for some people at certain points of time. Just right now, I'm telling you guys, we just started this new format for the podcast. I'm working on it, right? So I want to continue to make sure that this podcast builds into something that can really be good for everyone. And the reason I changed it, straight up analytics. So those of you guys who are into YouTube, there's an analytics button that shows you like certain data about your videos. And when I was looking at the analytics of my the Morning Star Drive podcast, yes, I know that there's a lot of people that listen to the entire thing from beginning to the end. But analytics shows that most people only listen to like the first 20 minutes. Yeah, like the beginning portion of the show. And then they don't listen much for the music, the news, and especially the sports. Yes, I got the hint, guys. And it's interesting because analytics shows me which parts of the podcast are most popular, and it's always the beginning section. The time when we're kind of just, I'm just kind of laying out what's been happening in my life, realizations I've had, things that are going on, reports on what's happening with the trials and stuff like that too. So looking at the analytics, I was like, I got to make this a little bit better where people will want to listen to more. Right? So I want to make it like the first part of the podcast for almost the entire podcast. You know what I mean? Like, I know that word studies are very, very big too. So when I look at the Mondays and the Fridays, the word studies are pretty big, right? And I also like the practical word studies. People are very, very into those things too. So I am going to, now I'm not going to cut everything out and just do something that's just, raw. But I do want to test things out and try it a bit more. So greatly appreciate if you guys will constantly give me some feedback and stuff like, oh, I like this part better. And yes, I did hear from some of you guys, like if there was a second person in the podcast, that would be great. And I thought it would be really, really good too. It's just that it's hard to find someone. Well, I think it's going to be impossible to find someone to do this every single day, like 5 days a week. I think the only person that has that conviction and fire for this podcast to do this every day is just me. Most people are working and everything else, so I know that they can't do it. But I'm thinking if I can do this once a week, maybe twice a week, finding some other people that would like to do the podcast with me, something that I connect with very, very well, I think I'm going to try that too. And I would love to do it in person because there is a connection when you're doing it in person. It's much, much different. And then the sound quality I'm able to control a lot better too. So those are some things that I am looking into. But I do have some super exciting news for you guys. There are 2 new podcasts that will be coming out in the next few weeks. So already we have like the prayer podcast coming out once a week. Hopefully we'll get those out every single Thursday. And usually I send them out 12 hours after the original podcast. So it might be hard in the US a little bit because I do it in Asian time. So when I do it at 2:30 p.m. the day, like say the Monday podcast comes out on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. because that's like the time difference. But I usually send it 12 hours later, which means that it'll be 2:30 a.m. So I might switch it to like 4 or maybe 5 a.m. so that people will be able to get it right away after they come out of pre-dawn, stuff like that too, which would be around 8 p.m. in 8 p.m. in Asia time, 8 to 9 p.m., which I think is not too bad. But we do have two new podcasts coming out. I'm super excited about these two. The first one is The Man Cave. I've been talking about this for a while. It's a podcast, bunch of guys just shooting the breeze, talking about why, I just recorded a new podcast for The Man Cave, and we'll start releasing them on May 7th. Right, which will be a Tuesday, I believe, a Monday or Tuesday. It'll be Monday in America, Tuesday in the Asian countries. But that's going to be something where it's going to be pretty cool because it's a podcast to help people understand. Both males and females can watch it. The male mind, how we can bring more males, how can we manage or treat them better so that we can do better in this history. We have a lot of different cool things that come up. It'll be about a 1 hour podcast. We're trying to do that about once a week. But I also, like I said, guys, I do want to put out a female one. And, here's a funny thing. So Chris Jansen, he does Provicom, right? He's got a new one coming up this week for Provicom. And he's like, I was bringing up like, hey, we need a girl one. We need a girl man cave, right? He's like, what a dumb name. You might as well just call it Tampon. And I was just laughing my head off. Like, can you imagine if that podcast was called The Tampon? So I was just like, yeah, I thought it was hilarious. But, I'm hoping, I've already got one person who would like to do the girl version of Man Cave. And if there's some other people out there who are really like to do one of those things where you have like 3 or 4 girls just talking together about what they're experiencing, what they're going through in this history, I would love for you guys to do something like that too, where it'll be Man Cave one week and then then I don't know what we're going to call it the next week, and then Man Cave, and then the girl, then the guy, then the girl. And I think that would be kind of cool too. And like I said, I would love to see how girls honestly react to the Man Cave. I would love to see that, right? Where they would listen to it first and then react to the Man Cave. And I think that would be really, really funny. But so that's the first one coming out. That comes out not this week, but next week. It's going to be Monday in America, Tuesday in Asia. Right, Tuesday in Asia. So I think that's going to be super funny and hilarious. And I hope you guys will really enjoy that one too. And then the second one, this is coming out pretty soon. It's called Love and Life. And this is a brand new blessed couple in America. They're doing a podcast sharing their love and their life in this history. What is it like being a new family, being blessed, being married in this history, how they handle the difficulties and go through life as a blessed couple. It's very, very much geared towards career department and those that are already married. But I do think that's going to be a fun one where like a lot of people are just going to watch it, especially girls. It'll be like a soap opera, maybe, right? But I hope you guys will enjoy that one too. They're just getting into their recording now, so they won't be out probably until like the 2nd or 3rd week of May. So guys, look forward to those 2 new podcasts. I am looking forward to it too. I think it's going to be really fun to watch those ones also. Right? There is one thing I would like. Someone did suggest about the timestamps, and there was someone doing timestamps in the past. So what's a timestamp is? A timestamp is when it cuts the video up, and you can see like each section has a different, it has a title for each of them, right? So some people say, yeah, it'd be really nice if I knew which section was the word study, which section was 2G talks and stuff like that, right? And I think that is something that you guys can help out with. And the cool thing about YouTube is, if you just listen to it and comment the timestamp. So you know how you normally comment? You comment and then you put a timestamp like 34 with colon, semicolon, no, with 34, at 34 minutes 57 seconds. So you put 34 colon and then 57, space, dash, space, and then you put the title of 2G Talks. What's going to happen is even if you do it from the comments, it'll split the actual, podcast will split into those different sections. So if there's anyone out there who is like religiously listening to the podcast who would like to just do that, that would be amazing and awesome. Putting out the timestamps in the podcast with titles like, at 54 colon 57 space space 2G Talks. At 00 colon 00 you put like intro or whatever it is. If there's anyone out there who can do that, that would be awesome. Like I said, you don't have to put in the description. It can just be in the comment section, and it's going to automatically split up the entire podcast into sections, right? So that is something I think would be a great help. If there's some people out there who would like to do that, that would be such an amazing and awesome help for me, right? So if you're out there, go ahead, start doing that. I would love for a lot of people out there to come help out with that. All right. So, yeah. So I'm excited. Like I said, the podcast is growing. We are getting more viewership, and we are like doing things in a newer way. We have more segments coming out. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy this too. All right. So here's something that happened over the weekend, and I thought it was quite funny because more rumors about me. So more rumors, all right? So the funniest one, I still think, the funniest one, the most hilarious and extreme one is that I married Kyla. Like, I think that's the funniest one by far. And, it hasn't grown into another rumor where I have kids with her and stuff like that too. It's just still I'm married to her. So that's out there, right? So I got this interesting call. And this interesting call was a member from Taiwan. And this person sent me this person was like frantic, like very, very nervous. And like, I don't know this person very well either. Like, I know them, but I've never talked to them before. And they are just like audio calling me on Instagram. And I'm just like, what the heck? What is going on here? And I'm like, I don't know if I can trust, right? So I didn't answer it. I let things calm down for a day. And then I wrote a text and I said, hey, what's going on? And then, he was very, very like emotional. And he's like, hey, I heard. So here's the first rumor. The first rumor is I left Providence, right? So there's the first one. So I heard you left Providence. Second rumor he said to me is, I heard you wrote articles on it. And he sent me the links to the articles, which I didn't do, obviously. And then last one he says, and I heard you also said that all the things that AJ said about Sunsi being guilty is true. And it was interesting that was the starting point of the conversation. Like, he basically went out and says these three said, like, what? In my head, I'm like, I left Provi. It's like, where is this guy getting this from? I wrote articles, and then I also told everyone that what Sunsi said about Sunsi being, what KJS said about Sunsi being guilty is true. I'm like, no, none of those are true. But this person was so stressed, which kind of made me stressed. And because I don't know this person very well either, but they're from Taiwan, and they're just going like, please tell me what, basically demanding me to tell them what the truth was. Like, tell me what the truth, is it real? Did he really do that? And I'm going to be honest with you, I was kind of put off by it. I was like going, this guy is just telling me these rumors about me and then telling me that Sunsim is guilty and tell me the truth about it. I'm like, I was so put off by it. I was really put off by it, right? And, I liked it that I was on text message because I could write things and erase things that sound too emotionally charged. But I was like pretty much saying, I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Right? I'm like, you got to calm down. And one of the reasons I told him was, think about this. Wherever you heard this from said 3 things about me, and all of them are false. Can you trust anything else that they're telling you? And then the person began to calm down. And they calmed down. And, by the end of the conversation, I was a little bit more sympathetic, right? Because I thought to myself, is like, wow, these people, some of these people are just hearing those things for the first time right now. And then I found out later is he heard it from some chat room. So I think this chat room is like a chat room where all the people that have, like the ex-members of Providence are in, like this huge chat room, like 200-300 people, whatever it is. And he hears all the news from that chat room. But thank God he said he left that room because it was just too toxic and stuff. But that was, I was like kind of shocked. I was like, wow, the rumors are coming up with is quite interesting, right? Because, this guy's freaking out because he thinks that I left. And then I'm saying that all these things are true. And he's like, I don't want to listen to anyone else I don't trust. I trust you. So please tell me what you're saying. Please tell me. And I was like, whoa. Like, number one is all 3 of those rumors have no truth whatsoever in it. So I'm like, you got to calm down. Like, you really need to calm down. But I was very grateful and thankful that he calmed down even more. And then when I talked to some other people who've actually had friends that they know that went into that chat room, they said it's toxic, and they said that you're basically going through hell in that chat room. And when I heard that, wow, it must have been really difficult to be in that chat room. I'm not sure how that person got invited, and I became even more sympathetic. Like, man, I shouldn't actually be too. I shouldn't be too harsh on this person, like, in my heart. But I was just thankful it was all done on text message because one good thing about text messaging is you even though you're thinking or feeling something at that moment, when you're talking face to face, like emotion comes out and you say what you feel at that time. But when you're texting, it takes time for you to write it down. And then by the time you finish writing it, you calm yourself down and like, hey, I shouldn't say this. Hey, that's a little bit too harsh. And I thought to myself, I was like, yeah, I think that's one of the good things about, texting is it takes time for you to write it down. And then after that, you're able to correct yourself too. So yeah. So that's the 3 new rumors, guys. This pastor's guy is famous. I'm famous. I'm talked about in the Korean news by KDH. I'm apparently married to Kyla. I've left Providence. I believe in KJS, and I wrote articles too. So there it is, guys. Like that's more stuff. And for me, I do feel it is a mark of blessing that Satan feels that I am such a threat that he is, he's trying to get more and more people to say rumors about me too. But I hope you guys all out there, if you hear any of those rumors about me, you can correct everyone. Like, hey, there's no way he's that. There's no way he left. You got to listen to his podcast. Yeah, you guys can, you guys can advertise my podcast. But yeah, so that's kind of those are some of the thoughts that that's something that happened over the weekend, but very, very interesting. And I thought I just wanted to share it because I think it's good that on this platform you guys will know the truth. Like you guys might hear it yourself, and some people who don't hear this podcast, they're gonna have no idea. They'll have no idea what I'm doing, what my thoughts are, but they're only gonna go by their history, and the history of them knowing me is I'm very close to KJS, right? And which makes it very, very easy for them to say that, oh, he's on her side or something along that line. But I know everyone here is, everyone knows, you guys we've been together for this. Some of us, we've been together for the last 3 years. Some of us, we've been here for the last 3 months, but super grateful and thankful for all of you joining us here. So I got this interesting question from a member. And it was about last week's message. And the question was about the message telling us to entrust our thoughts to God entirely. And that's a tough question. That's a tough thing. Like, what is, and that's something I do think people need to unpack. To entrust your thoughts to God entirely. What does that mean? To entrust everything entirely. And I think that's something we need to think about what's the actual meaning of. So, a lot of people will think literally and say that we cannot think anything else, only what God says. I cannot have my own thoughts. And that's why, some people will get so literal that they'll only think of the word and they'll read the Bible, for like 5-6 hours. They'll only read the words. They won't go to school. And, some people get really extreme with that. So some questions that would come into our mind is, what does it mean to entrust? Right? To entrust means to commit to another with confidence, right? To commit to another with confidence, right? So it's not talking about I take on your mentality and I only think what you think. No, it's to commit to another with confidence, to put trust in God, right? Which means that we're still going to have our own thoughts, but we trust in God. We entrust, right? The word trust is in there. We're putting trust in God that even though I'm freaking out, but I know that God is a person in control and I entrust everything to you, right? And I think what's more interesting is when it says entrust your thoughts to God, it still means that we still have our own thoughts. We can still think certain things on our own. But even though we think those things and we're not sure, we can still put trust in God that even though I think or feel this way, I have confidence and I will commit myself to you, even though my heart or my emotions are telling me the exact opposite, right? We still have our own thoughts. So what does it mean that we entrust our own thoughts to God? Well, the only thing that God says in the Word, He doesn't say you cannot think what you want. It's about not thinking the wrong thing. Not having your own interpretations and your own perceptions, right? That's completely different, right? Because, for instance, we see a certain situation, like think about this. how many times have we put our own interpretations and our own perceptions on others? Where someone said something about you and you get so upset and then you say, oh, well, this person probably is just jealous of me and this person's like this, oh, and you start picking apart their life. But then later you realize you misunderstood them. You totally misunderstood them. And all the thoughts you've had for the last 4 days were completely wrong. But if you entrust your thoughts, what does that mean? Well, why did this person do this? And instead of going off on my own, giving my own interpretation, my own perceptions, I'll go to the person because I trust them. And I say, hey, I heard you said this. And in the beginning, I was a little bit upset, but I realized I don't even know what you were actually saying and what the context of what you're saying was. So, and then you ask that person, the person will tell you, oh, this is what I meant. Oh, we're talking about this. And then what happens is you don't have your own interpretation and your own perception of that situation, right? Because there's so many things we don't know. And when it comes to God's history, when it comes to God's will, a lot of times people interpret, well, this means that Sunseem's guilty. Oh, this means that Sunseem did this. Oh, this means that Sunseem is wrong. But that is our own interpretation, our own perception. We have to entrust it to God, right? We have to see it through God's eyes. And this is why we have to study the words of God, to understand God's thoughts, to understand what God thinks, what God's will is. Because if we start to interpret our own way, oh, God's will is to do this, but you don't study the word very well, then you're not going to see exactly what the will really is. We need to entrust it to God, right? I am going to have my thoughts. I do have my own life, my own way, my own personality, my own character. But when it comes to the things that I don't fully know, I got to entrust it to God. Like the situation in Providence right now with the trials, this and that, and all the slander, all the things that are happening, we have to entrust it to God. Why? Well, number one is not all the information is out. See, in life, what happens is we hear a lot of things, we see a lot of things, and we feel a lot of things. But many times we don't see it properly. We don't hear it properly. We don't feel it properly because we only have a limited amount of information or understanding. And we need to do it where we hear and perceive and we feel understanding properly. And, I think we've gone through this so many times in life when we were wrong so many times, right? Yeah, we've all gone through it, right? When it comes to someone else. And what is God asking of us? God is not asking you to have no more thoughts. You cannot think anymore. You cannot have your own character. You cannot have your own feelings, whatever it is. It's about the way you see, the way you hear, and the way you feel. When it comes to God's will, when it comes to God's path, the things God is saying, what God is doing, we have to take on what God sees, hears, and feels. How is that done? Through prayer and through the word, right? It's not saying to take and erase your mind. No, it's saying we got to understand God properly because God understands us. I think that's one thing that we have to understand that's really deep is God knows what we feel. God sees it. God knows our hearts. And he understands us and he says, yeah, they're not perfect yet. Yeah, I understand and I forgive you. Yeah, I know you made a mistake. I understand. But a lot of times we don't understand God. So many times we follow God. But then when something crazy happens, like what's happening now, the chaos and tribulation, we start to do it our own way, thinking our own thoughts, our own interpretations, and then misunderstandings keep popping up, and then people freak out. This means that we need to entrust our thoughts to God, right? Not only when it's easy, because when things are easy, it's so easy to say, oh, God did this. Oh, God is so good. But when it's really, really difficult, this is when it's really big and crucial. We start thinking, we don't start thinking our own way, our own interpretation, our own thoughts. But when we entrust our thoughts to God, especially in these deep and dark times, we entrust it with confidence, to put trust into God and say, God, I don't know what's happening, but I trust you. Entrust everything to God. Things are going to happen. We got to pray. We got to ask. We got to seek. We got to look for what God says, what God feels, what God thinks. And, sometimes our eyes deceive us. And sometimes one thing that we talked about maybe 2 weeks ago, I said, sometimes you won't get an answer right away. And if you don't get that answer right away, what does that mean? It means you got to wait. Just wait. Entrust it to God. He's never let us down before. We've gone through dark times. Entrust it to God, right? So if you think about even right now, amongst this chaos that we're going through in Providence, the people that make the biggest mistakes in this time of chaos are the ones who made their decisions early and hastily. Oh, did you hear about this? Oh my gosh. Oh my God. It's all true. They looked at the evidence and said, this is enough to convince me. But it wasn't all the evidence. And when you look more and more now, it's not convincing. And even now, more and more information is constantly coming out that points in a different direction. And this is why we do what? We have to entrust everything to God entirely. Doesn't mean to get rid of your own thoughts. Like, don't stop thinking, right? But we need to understand God deeply and powerfully. And we put trust into God. That, yeah, it's difficult. Man, it totally looks really bad. But I entrust my thoughts to God. All right? So I hope that that helps you out, because someone did ask me that question last week. I was going to put it into the Friday podcast, but the Friday podcast was already getting pretty long, and I didn't want to do that. But I'll do that. I did that for today. And there's a lot of different things that are going on. I hope you guys are doing well. Keep asking the questions in the comment section. I would love to talk about them. Even if there's a question every day, would love to go into it. Right? New thoughts. Like tomorrow, I'm super excited because I'm going to be talking about some good articles that are coming about defending Sunstream too. And I'll talk about that in tomorrow's Provi in the media. I think you guys you'll really enjoy that one too, because it's very reasonable and logical too. Either way. All right. So we're going to take a quick break here. So I hope that you guys really enjoy this. This is going to be the first break before we get into the word study on the Sunday message. And I hope you guys enjoyed that quick music break. And it's something that, I love music. And I hope it's something that we can continue, especially when it comes to the music videos on Saturdays. And, since I have a playlist for the music, I hope that I can put up even more songs from our member artists from around the world and put them into music videos with lyrics and such so people can sing along together with them too. But wonderful song. All right. So let's get into today's word study. This week's message, powerful message. I thought it was really, really good. In every time period, God repays according to how they treat the one sent. And I think this is a message. I don't know how to say this I want to say it in a way, for me, it's refreshing. It is refreshing because so much is, we see all the craziness that is happening. And sometimes we feel like, is God not going to do anything about it? Have you guys ever felt that? Is God going to do anything about this? And the answer is, when you listen to it, it's you know what? God will. And he's done it time and time again in the past, that in every time period, God is repaying according to how they treat the one sent. And I think this is a message that gives a lot of relief in our hearts. I thought one thing that was kind of cool is Sunday at pre-dawn. I woke up really early. I went to pray, and the only prayer I had was because I was, when I'm talking to God, I'm pretty upset about the situation. I'm like, God, I don't want to ask you to judge them because that's not for me to do. Right? Because I don't know the full situation. Not all of them need to be judged. We don't know what their full situation is. But I will say the prayer that is the scariest prayer. And I was like, God, judge them according to what they have done. And that was my prayer for the morning. And when the Sunday message came out, I was like, oh, this is the most relieving thing for me. But then after I prayed that prayer, God, judge them according to what they have done, I kind of reflected on myself and I better repent before I will be part of that judgment too. So I started repenting oh God, I'm so sorry though. Please forgive me my sins because I've done some bad things too. And I got to get rid of this sin or else I don't want to be part of the judgment that's with those people too. So I found that quite funny. I was like, judge them according to what they've done. Oh God, but forgive me because I don't want to be part of that thing. So take care of all my sins and stuff. But I found that to be a very refreshing Sunday message. And it's a powerful message that God will give judgment depending on how they treat the one sent, not on how they treat God. And that's a very interesting thing because a lot of people will separate the two. They'll separate, I love God. I love God. I believe in Him. I've never not loved God. And they'll just say how much they love God and how well they've treated God. So they'll think that they'll never deserve judgment. But when you understand how God judges, God is not judging by how you treat Him. It's about how you treat the one sent. Right? Look at what happened to the Israelites when they went against the Messiah. They disbelieved, they tormented, persecuted, inflicted all types of suffering. They killed Him. And God's like, no, you're judged according to how the one that's sent. Right? Paid according to the deeds, right? According to your deeds on how you treat the one that God sends. And the first thing I thought to myself is oh, okay, that's interesting. So what would be a reason why would God judge according to how you treat the one that's sent? Well, I like how the message explained, the person that's sent is the person God takes action through so that the will can be fulfilled. And that makes sense. That makes sense because this is the one that is physically fulfilling the will on the earth. If you stop this person, if you're stopping this person, you're stopping God's will, which means God is going to be upset, right? And so God sees how you treat the one sent, right? And how you treat Him is how you treat God. Then the second thing I thought to myself was okay, so that makes sense. Is if you stop Him, you're stopping God. But then the second thing that's probably more important that came to my thoughts when I was listening to the messages, on top of that, it's not just about why would God choose this person? Is He choosing this person just because he's fulfilling the will? Just because he has the skills? And the answer is no. Ultimately, the person is chosen because they love God so deeply and God loves them that deeply. So if you think about this, it's why would you judge someone according to how they treat the one sent? Well, if there's that deep love between the two, imagine this. You have a good friend you're really, really close with, but then they hit your child, you're not going to be so happy, regardless of how close you're like, hey, don't touch my child. Because you love your child so much. Just look at, even with parents in church, one of the reasons why parents love me so much, because I love their children. I play with their children, have fun with their children. And because of that, they're like, wow, you treat my children like that? Then they feel like I'm treating them like that. Right? So why does God judge those depending on how they treat the one that's sent? Number one is because the will is fulfilled through that person. So stopping that person is stopping the will, which is judgment, obviously, right? The second one is it's the person that God loves. And we all know this too. You treat someone does something to your mom, do you know how pissed you would get? Because you love them. And those are the two thoughts that came to my mind that we really have to put into consideration. Like when you look at the ultimate example of how Israel treated Jesus, they treated Jesus with evil. So much pain, so much torment, so much wrong. But interestingly, because they separated the person sent and God who's in heaven, they thought they're doing the right thing. Oh, we're doing the right thing. And if you think about if God made the standard only about how you treat God, it's really subjective because God is invisible. God is spirit, right? So how would you treat people fairly, or what's the metric? Right? What's the metric? How did you treat God today? I don't know. He's invisible. What does that mean, right? And I think it's also very, very difficult because he's invisible, you go through an entire workday, sometimes you forget about God. You're going to get judged for that. It's very difficult to judge people according to how you treat God as the standard because we're physical beings. And this is why it's based on the one that is sent, the one that he loves. Like no one's going to... Imagine if God was physical, how many people would torment God? How many would slander when he has that much power, right? Everyone's going to treat God well if he was physical. So he bases on how you treat the one he sent. And the same is true for today, right? It really is, right? God is watching us during this time, even right now. How do we treat the one that is sent, right? Because how we treat, how we think, where our hearts go is how God sees how you treat him. Jesus was sent, right? And then he's sent again for this time period. But then Jesus too, in the same manner, Jesus comes back and he needs a body. And in the same way, how you treat the man of mission, the body of Jesus, is how you treat Jesus, right? And everyone's going to be paid, both good and evil, for how they treat the Lord. So, we have to understand that this is a basic principle, a core principle we have to understand. And I think it's not anything that's weird because we would do the exact same thing with the people we send, with the people that we love, right? Someone we send, even for me, I think about having a child. Imagine you send the child to school and then the school treats your child in that way. Oh, I'd be so upset. How you treat the person God sends is how God treats you and how you'll be judged, right? That's why Jesus says, hey, guess what? Matthew 10:40, this week's scriptures. Whoever welcomes you is welcoming me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me, which is God. Everything goes back up to God. So how you treat the man of mission is how you treat Jesus, which is how you treat God. So I like this point that came from the messages. Okay, let's talk about what should be your first thoughts, right? When you meet a man, right? When you meet someone who's probably like Jesus, when Jesus came, the first thought shouldn't have been, how do we kill him? What's wrong with this person? Is this person crazy? The first question should be, who sent him? That's the first thing that needs to be discerned and realized. And I think that's the same thing in our life too. A lot of times we pray for things and God sends us help, but we reject that person like the conflict and ignorance. That's the same thing Josiah should have done with King Necho. And King Necho even said, he confessed that God sent him. That's the first thought. Who sent him? Can you imagine how different the world would be today if everyone received Jesus 2,000 years ago, if everyone listened to and followed him? Can you imagine how different the world would be here? can you imagine how much less suffering there would be in Israel? Jesus came and he, if you think about it, if he becomes a judgment point, he's the standard, then when Jesus came, he is the one that is destined to cause the rising and falling of many people. He is both curse and blessing at the same time. He is the sign. He's the sign. He came, now the judgment begins. And that's why, we hear so much about, the prophecies. He comes with the judgment of fire. The judgment is coming with the Lord. But what's the judgment? It's the Lord himself. He is the judgment. God judges and repays according to how they treat the Lord. If you call Jesus a sinner, then God considers them a sinner. If you believe and love Jesus, then God treats you as righteous. God will save you. God will love you. God will bless you. And that's why, when you look at the world right now, look at what's happening. Remember, think about this. How you treat the Lord, or how you treat the man of mission, is how God will judge individuals, nations, and the world. Look at the situation. Like Korea, they're already talking about nuclear weapons because the situation with North Korea is terrible. Think why? Wars going on. Why? Ukraine and Russia. Why? Sudan. Why? Political turmoil in the U.S. Why? Gun violence. Why? How you treat the one sent is how God judges individuals, nations, and the world. And that's a scary thing if you think about it. However, it's also a hopeful thing because once it is done right, then everything gets resolved. Holy Trinity, remember, they're spirit. Even Jesus is a spirit. And they cannot fulfill anything on this earth without a body. The will of this time period has to be carried out on this earth. And it cannot be done with just a spirit because we cannot see, we cannot feel, we cannot hear. And this is why if there is always a body, then God uses that body as the standard, which means we need to know this really deeply. Like know this inside out clearly and then take action accordingly. How are we going to live our life? Know who is the one that sent. Who's the one that sent Jesus? Who's the one that sent the man of mission? How do we know who the man of mission is? Because they don't testify about themselves. They testify about the Lord. They testify that it's only because of God. They talk about Jesus. They talk about God. They talk, and this is the person who's got the mission of the time period. And they become basically the sign of judgment. It's a scary and amazing thing at the same time. Look at this. Remember, we looked at the stories of Moses, the story of Joseph. The one with Joseph was a very, that's the one, that's like Sunseep story right there, right? His own brothers conspired against him, sold him for money, which is parallel with Judas selling Jesus for money. And eventually they were judged. Potiphar's wife tried to tempt him sexually, but he didn't fall, but took action perfectly. Falsely accused, imprisoned unfairly. But even in prison, faithful to God. Even in prison, loved and believed still, no matter what. And eventually becomes the prime minister of Egypt. He went through so much injustice, but yet his heart, he wasn't disheartened. He didn't stumble. He took action perfectly. He was blessed. And in the end, what happened? The very thing he wanted from the beginning. Harmony with his brothers and his family, to see his father again. And this led to the foundation for the future of the country of Israel, the nation itself. It's the foundation for Jesus to come. We have to put it deep in our hearts. God absolutely, without a doubt, walks with the one that is sent and his followers. Both, not just the one sent, but also the ones that follow. God acts using the one sent And the one that is sent will never be ruined or never be judged by the end. Right? That's why it's like Joseph, right? We heard the stories of it's crazy. Like sometimes we think, the story when he was talking about Elijah, where he was praying in the mountains. And then at one point, Elijah was thinking to himself, did I sin? Did I do something wrong? But you have to think about this deeply. God doesn't fulfill the will through a sinner, but through the righteous. Now, someone might say, well, what about Solomon? Solomon sinned. What about King David sinned too, but he had to repent to get himself back in, right? They had to repent. Even though they sinned, they had to repent. And then this is why Elijah could come back and be used by God. This is why all the other central figures that went through that could be used again because they repented. They came back to God. God destroys those who goes against the one that is sent because that is his body. That is the one he loves. This is the person fulfilling the will, predestined. And that's why we have to be absolute in our thoughts, our conviction, our faith, and our actions too. When you look at how, all the time periods ended and started, right? When Jesus came at the end of the Old Testament, what was his job? His job was to fulfill the will of the Old Testament. He's fulfilling the will. But it was the wrong thoughts of people. They thought God is coming himself. They thought God will come himself, destroy all the enemies. And these are just ignorant thoughts because he comes to say he loves everyone. He doesn't love just the chosen people. He loves everyone. And he wants everyone to be saved. And that's why there's wrong thoughts of, well, Jesus should judge these people. God should judge these people. And the answer is he loves them. When Jesus came, what did he do? He helped the people. He helped the sick. He helped the poor, both physically and spiritually. And he taught the people the words of the Old Testament, but he explained it deeply, the true words. And Jesus straight up was like, yeah, guess what? God is my Father, right? And anyone who comes against me, right? They are the sons of the devil. I am sons of God. I'm a son of God, but anyone who comes against me is the sons of the devil. And that enraged people. But look at it today too, right? Just like 2,000 years ago, they didn't know that Jesus was sent by God. They never asked. They never thought. They never, what's the word? They never discerned. So instead, they persecuted, criticized. They said that Jesus was a cult. They disbelieved. They thought he was insane. But that was the fulfillment of God's promise, coming through the body of Jesus. No one knew. So instead, people became the body of Satan. So you have to look at this, like what's happening even right now. God repaid everyone according to their deeds. What deeds? How they treat the one God sends. And that's every time period. Right? Every time period. The spirit can't do anything to fulfill a physical purpose. That's why you need a body. Without the body, how do you connect with other humans? How do you communicate with other humans? Right? I like the point is, think about your own spirit and soul. Your own spirit and soul can't do it alone. It has to use your body. And that's why even the Holy Trinity used Jesus. Even Jesus comes again using a body to save more bodies. And we have to be absolute on this. What's the biggest reason why the religious leaders failed to realize God in 2,000 years ago and today? It's the failure to truly pray. True prayer. Really asking, really seeking. Nothing for my own, nothing so that I can do better on my own. It's really, God, is this really it? It's not a one-time prayer. Look at the way Sunsi prays. He prays until he gets the answer. He prays for 40. He prays for 70. He prays for 110. He keeps praying. And this is how Jesus did the same thing, and the gospel spread to the entire world, where now billions right now believe in God. Right now at this moment, billions do. And the only reason people can't move forward from like the new time period, from the old time period to the new time period, is because they need to repent, believe, and follow. And that's the hard part, because we've gone too far. We've crossed lines. We've become too arrogant in our own position. We've become stubborn, and we pay the price of our sins because we failed to do our responsibility. And now 2,000 years later, God's still looking at how they treat Jesus. People like Israel, right? How do they treat Jesus? Realize this entire concept that the Sunday message talks about after seeing how God treats people in the stories in the Bible. And that's why it's so important to read the Bible. It's so important to understand how great it is to realize God's word correctly. Our faith's got to be firm, but it can't be firm if you don't understand the words of God. We got to have that never-changing, that song we used to sing in the past, the never-changing heart of the Lord. It was like 일편단심, right? That song was called like a Forever My Lord, like the old version that I'm going to say 90% of you out there will never remember. It goes, the day I met the Lord, I understood. There's an old school song. It's from like old Korean pop music. Never changing heart, right? God is watching. God is looking with fiery eyes to see how the wicked generation is treating the one God sent. Yeah. He's watching. He's been watching the last 2,000 years. He's been watching 6,000 years. And those that believe and love the one that is sent, God walks together with them. God blesses them through the Lord. But I think one thing that it brings up, I think that's very, very important for us to understand is it doesn't mean that if God walks and blesses you, it doesn't mean that we never go through suffering. It says, take a look at the 400 years of the early Christian church. Sure, eventually it became the national religion, the state religion of the Roman Empire, but it took 400 years, right? 400 years. There was still suffering. Still suffering. We still got to go through it. But in the end, we win. In the end. What is the greatest sin? I'll end with this. The greatest sin is the sin of a generation treating the one sent by God unjustly like a sinner. That is the greatest sin. Because you are treating God the same way. We need to repent, because when I read this, I'm like, the sin of the generation. It's not talking about just the people who did it. It's the entire generation. We're in that generation. We're going to go through the generational sin, treating the one sent by God unjustly like a sinner. It's the entire generation. And this is why we need to repent continuously. So I hope that all of us will reflect on the Bible, see all the different ways God worked until now, right? And we have to live with that absolute faith, that conviction in our hearts. So that is the Sunday message word study for today. I hope it's something that makes you guys think more deeply about what's going on. And it's, leave your comments below. I'd love to hear different realizations, what you guys had too. All right. So before we get into 2G Talks today, we're going to have another musical break. So we'll see you in a few moments.
It's you I dream of, Lord. I long for your embrace. With love you've led me here, ever thankful for this grace. Let me feel you, Lord, I pray. Fill my heart with your heart. Let my spirit in yours embrace. In the passion of your fire, my bridegroom, break me, heal me, restore me, my Lord. Please make of me your masterpiece, a bride of love and joy. Oh, my love, shape me, perfect me, free me from my sins. Let me live with you forever. just wanna be your eternal love. You're my heaven. I know I've hurt you, Lord, brought you pain beyond compare. I failed in many ways, your heart I rip and tear. But Lord, you've shown me grace in every circumstance. You've forgiven my disgrace. You gave me one last chance to show you that I love you. I need you. I thank you, my Lord. I long to be your hands and feet, a bride of love and joy. Oh, my love, to know you and feel you. You're my everything. I just wanna be your eternal love. You're my heaven, my love. I wanna show you how I love you, how I need you, my Lord. I long to be your hands and feet, a bride of love and joy. Oh, my Lord, I love you, I miss you. You're my everything. I just wanna be your eternal love. You're my heaven. I love you, Lord, forevermore. Holy Son Jesus, my bridegroom. I love you. You're in me. I'm in you. My bridegroom. I love you. You're in me. I'm in you.
So let's get into the final segment for today. Of course, every single Monday we have 2G Talks with Eddie Kwan from San Francisco, who is currently in Hawaii and studying for the LSAT. Well, he did take the LSAT test, so we're just waiting to see how well he did on it and what his future plans are. Today, Eddie's going to go over a couple different things, and I hope it's something that you guys will really enjoy. He's bouncing off some topics that we actually talked about during the Man Cave about the kinds of things that guys would like about Providence, right? When it comes to mentality and mindset. So basically he wants to make sure, he hopes that this will be useful to evangelize new guys, but also to raise guys in Providence too, all right? Especially the younger people also, as he's someone who's in charge of those who are SS, right? So everyone, please welcome who's currently in Hawaii. This is Eddie Kwan with 2G Talks.
Good morning, everyone. Today I come to you guys from Philadelphia on the East Coast of America, and also from New York as well. It's quite different. So I'm about 6 hours ahead from where I've been in Hawaii, and also, you know, I know for everyone across the world, you use a different weather system than we do here in America. But for me, it's about 30 degrees colder, right? 30 degrees Fahrenheit colder, and so it's been quite different. And all the clothes that I took to Hawaii are kind of like my regular summer clothes. So when I was coming here and checking the weather, I was like, oh man, I don't really have any clothes for this kind of weather. But I'm here together with my family to go visit my brother. He just finished his second year of dental school. And for dental school, they have this thing where the first 2 years of dental school is like a period of just theoretical learning, like in the classroom. But as soon as they're done with their second year, just like with a lot of med schools too, they have a ceremony, like a white coat ceremony, where they are ceremonially vested the white coat that they will don as doctors. And after that point, they'll start to see patients starting from the summer of their second year. So it was a really pivotal moment. I think it really meant a lot. As the segment is 2G Talks 2, I talked about one of the motivations behind this channel was that we came from Korea too, right? So even in this country, we are immigrants as well, and so this is about the second generation. And growing up, there were so many difficulties within our family as well. And so to see my brother going through this process and of at least getting to a point where he can achieve part of his dreams of becoming a dentist and supporting our family and such too, is really heartwarming to see. And so we were very happy to be, and it was so thankful to the Trinity and also to all of our Providence members too. I think this is like it would be an untenable dream without the support of each person, and even with not just with my brother, but with everything that I've received and gotten to, it really would have been impossible without the support of everyone at home, even those who are listening to this channel as well. I think for Justin and myself, growing up, we didn't really have a whole lot of our extended family that we could see. Growing up in America, most of our family was back in Korea. And so, really, in so many different ways, everyone at home has become our family, right? And like every time we run into Providence, I think there's this kind of this air of this close knit and warm environment. And so, for me, and one thing that I've really acquired is that even if I haven't seen someone in a long time, as long as there's someone who I liked the first time, when I met them, I'll remember them even like even if it's years later. Actually, for me, in my mind, I'm still close to them, even if I haven't seen them in a long time. But I know that's kind of different from people. But as a second gen who's grown up in Providence and lived a long time here, I think that's a very worthwhile sort of mindset to have. Right, and so one case in point is that even when I went to Hawaii too, I think for some of the members, they originally had felt that I hadn't been there in a long time, right, and I hadn't talked to some of them in a long time, so they wondered if I remember them, that they wondered if I was really close to them in that sort of sense. But for me, I was like, oh yeah, of course, like the last time and even the first few times that I knew you, like I got a read into your character, and I saw what kind of people you guys are, and so even from the first time that we met and had conversation, I already felt close to you. I already felt that sort of great connection to you, and so I really believe that this is something that we have in Providence that is a huge gift and an asset, and I really hope that even at home that people can develop that too, right? If you haven't felt that way yet, one thing that I would maybe even advise is to go check out other churches too, other Providence churches. I think oftentimes it can happen if you get kind of stuck in your own bubble, that is your own church. But yeah, and it doesn't even have to be in person, but connect with members from other churches and have conversation as well. So yeah, that's just some of the takeaways from having been here the last few days. We're gonna go to the New York church on Sunday, and it's going to be cool because it's been quite a long time since I've been here. It's my first time bringing my parents to this side of the country. So it's really exciting. My dad, he hardly ever travels, so seeing him traveling is kind of cool. It's kind of funny. It's kind of adorable because he really doesn't go out that much. But I think he at this stage in his life, he doesn't like to go anywhere unless it's for a very important reason. And I think our brother, him going through his white coat ceremony, it was an important enough reason. So that was really cool. And I guess one other thing to share for today, I've been recently talking to a lot of members, a lot of guys about various different topics, and it's cool. It's really great because we have so much to share to one another and to gain from talking to one another. And so it was interesting because right before I came here, I met up with the Hawaiian the members, the guys there. We were eating dinner, and the conversation topic was really great because this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, and I think for this kind of marks a transition for a lot of guys when we're younger, and I think it has implications for evangelism and for raising guys, right? And not just guys, but raising younger people, right, as they're growing into leaders, and raising for raising second gen too. Because second gen kind of go through this time where they have to make their faith theirs. Right? They have to make the things that they go through in Providence theirs. Right? It can't just be their parents' faith. It can't just be like something that they were dragged to go do as they were growing up. They need a moment of realization. So the thought process was this. The conversation started with like this younger guy, this somewhat younger guy. He was asking me like, oh my gosh, like when I see you and when I see these guys, you guys seem so disciplined in being able to do some of these things. And like, he was wondering if he could have that discipline himself too. But it was so funny because as he was saying that, I was thinking to myself, man, I am so undisciplined in so many different things. But so I was laughing at that. But I was thinking to myself, but of course, in some things I am disciplined. But then the thing that came to mind was like, but I know what you're talking about. And that came because for the last like 3-5 years, when you're younger. And I think this is especially true for guys. I mean, some girls too, but just young people in general, but especially true for guys. Guys like talk out, like they talk a lot. Like they need to show like that they are I don't know I don't know what the right word is, that they are like someone to be looked up to, like they're the alpha. Like I don't want to use that word, but they're the alpha, right, of the pack, right? And so I think what that tends to do when you're younger is you talk more than you've actually done, right? Because honestly, most young people, they really haven't really done anything, and same goes for myself too. But I think over the course of the pandemic and even after graduating college, I realized that and this includes myself, like for when I do this and when other people do this, because the more you talk to people, the more you start to see this kind of thing too, is that the more you talk but the less you've done to back up, over time it grows to be very unimpressive, right? And this is something that I've realized kind of hard from just observing my own life too. And then so at a certain stage, especially of late, I only really began to talk to people about things that I have done or that I have been concretely doing. Right? No longer just about just my thoughts and opinions that aren't backed by anything, right? Or that can be disproven, or my predilections for any certain things. But the tie-in that I think this would help for evangelism and for raising people is that sometimes in Providence I was talking about this with some of the guys in terms of male evangelism, and I think there's a way to market this towards guys and for girls too. But there's a way to market this for guys in a way that would really pull in many people. That I think would attract many people. And the way to do that, and this kind of spins it on its head because it makes sense, right? So we have a lot to offer in Providence, and I think what we have, we need to be able to explain well on their terms and what it is that we have, what it is that you have. Like for me, this is what I have. Like even in some of what I described, right? It's like kind of one of the most important lessons for me is like Cain's personalities, right? Because it kind of teaches you clearly how you can live your life in a way that avoids like many of the common pitfalls in life, and it teaches you to be humble and less arrogant, and like to kind of show you through your actions and such. So there's a lot of these different things, right? And so that is a huge thing that we have in Providence that many kids don't have, right? At least not explicitly, at least in like the way of organization and level that we have in Providence and that God has given to us through the Word. And so that is something that we have that I think could easily be given to other people as well. And so and also the way that we need to explain it to them has to be using terms that they understand, right? Terms that people understand. If we focus so much on using our own language, the language that is common to like just a select few people, even within your church, it doesn't have the same pull as when you use language that they can understand. But in Providence, I really believe that we have the tool possible to help people achieve their dreams, their goals, their hopes for themselves, and cures for the problems that they go through in their lives. Like one of the things I was discussing with the guys related to this conversation, and I think this will be the last thing for today, is as we go through the world, we commit different kinds of sins, and at the time we might not know they're sins, and we might just commit other errors too, even if they're not necessarily errors in front of God. But whether people know it or not, as we start committing those errors and those sins, people tend to run away, right, from their problem. Sometimes they don't know what the root of their problem is, but oftentimes you can trace them back to your own problems too. But the greatest thing that I feel like that we've gained in Providence, that I've really been thinking about the last 3 years, is like there's nothing that comes from running away from one's problems. You can't outrun your problems forever. But the thing that Providence teaches us to do, that raises us to do, is become those who, at least to some degree, you might not be able to confront all of them right away, but over time confront yourself, right? And that's like our heavy emphasis on repentance and of changing, right, rapturing, salvation, like all of those things in order to restore ourselves and to rapture higher. That in essence is our sort of creed that tells us that we need to become better people. And I think that is such a powerful message. That is such an important thing. Even from a physical perspective, even from a mental perspective, even from like our human level perspective, even if people don't know all the things about the body, about the spirit, about the soul, even if people don't know as much about the rapture, about the Holy Spirit, about the Trinity in detail, about the golden city, even if they don't know about like what heaven is like too, the idea of rapturing and growing in like this sort of way that we're talking about, I think has appeal for a great many people, and it answers the problems and the questions that people face. And so I really hope that once again that through this kind of conversation we can reevaluate together, like what are the good ways that we can evangelize a lot of people, and to be frank, one of the things that we talked about is all across the world, actually, like the big problem in most countries is a lack of guys, right? And, I think this is really not a thing to point fingers and blame each other about like, oh, who did better, right? Who is it, I think sometimes we draw lines in the sand and we say, oh, it's because of you guys that we can't evangelize guys, or it's because the guys aren't doing well that we can't evangelize guys, or it's because the girls at church do this that we can't evangelize guys. But I think at this stage, in the point in many people's countries, it's no longer time to be pointing fingers, and it's really time to think about what we can do together. Because I think even girls know, like everyone who looks at Providence kind of from like, if you kind of take yourself out of your shoes and look macroscopically, the lack of guys really impacts everyone. Right? And it's not to say that we can't evangelize girls either, but just in general, like having way too improportionate of a balance, I think negatively impacts the whole. So I really hope that this is something that we can think about, like how we can do this together. And this is something that we have to do together. Guys alone aren't enough to handle this kind of thing on their own. And of course, entrusting this to just girls, like that doesn't make sense either, because this is something that the guys also have to take responsibility for. So I really hope that this is something that we can aspire for together. This is something that I'm definitely keenly interested in, and I know that Pastor Sky is keenly interested in as well. And so I really hope that everyone listening at home can really find strength in the fact that we're tackling this problem together, right? We're not tackling it by itself. And I think in Providence, because in so many places in the Western countries, in many of your capacities you've been running by yourself, you have a tendency to kind of lone wolf it and go about it on your own. But know that we have this community, know that we're doing this together. We can break down big problems into small sections, to small pieces, and different people can handle different things, and together we can come together in order to form a solution that we couldn't otherwise without each other and without the Trinity. And so with that, I'll wrap up today's episode of 2G Talks. I really hope that everyone has a great week. By the time you're listening to this, I'll have already headed back to Hawaii, with looking forward to the future together with everyone. Okay, so I'll catch you guys next week on another episode of 2G Talks.
And thank you so much, Eddie, for another wonderful episode of 2G Talks. And of course, the topics are always on point, and I hope it kind of it gives us the mental exercise. What are the things that we can do to make history in a better way, especially for male evangelism and raising males in the churches too? Either way. All right, so there it is, guys. That is the last segment for today's podcast on this wonderful Monday. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have an amazing Monday, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and feel your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know